tried to study this agenda just a little.
We'll have a workshop next Thursday night. Budget.
No, Thursday at 9.
On 26th. What's on the 26th?
That's our regular board workshop.
Yours is birthday.
It's your birthday?
26th. Huh?
We're singing to you at me.
Look like Skip Alone might be there.
It's quite a birthday present.
Don't know about Malcolm.
Yeah, heard about it last night. We can ask a moment silence today.
Okay, so,
We'll ask for a moment of silence, Malcolm.
Have you talked to Betty? Commissioner Siegel? Have you talked to Betty?
Text.
At that time.
Too.
I don't know.
And with the friend said, Father in heaven, we come again, I'm thanking you for life, health, strength. You come blessing your name, that your name worthy to be blessed. We thank you now, Father, for your goodness and your mercy. Father, we ask you to help us, Father, as we mourn the passing of our fellow commissioner or ex-commissioner, Malcolm Payne. Ask you to bless his family, let him stand strong, and know that you're God, and you're too wise to make a mistake. Thank you and bless you now. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Sit and bless. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Give us about 60 seconds. Silence, please. Remember, please. Oh. Amen. Amen. As always, before we begin our meeting, there's always a few housekeepers. The conference line has been set up. The number is 1-917-900-1022. The access code is 32347 #. This is not a toll-free number. You may be subject to long-distance charges according to your long-distance plan. When the chairperson opens the meeting for public comments, please follow the below instruction. Please dial 5. The moderator will unmute your line when it's your turn to speak and notify you by announcing the last 4 digits of your telephone number. Please announce your name and address, and you will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes. Any person wishing to address the board regarding an agenda item will be given 3 minutes to speak. And the commenter may only speak once for each agenda item. With that being said, go to number 3, the approval of the agenda.
Motion?
second.
Motion second, we approve the agenda as printed. All in favor say aye. Aye. We'll go to consent agenda. Is there anything on the consent agenda you want to take off, look at, talk about, or discuss?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion second, we'll approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. We go down to number 9, bids and public hearing. The board to hold the second of 2 public hearings set for this day at 9 a.m. or as soon thereafter as possible, to discuss and receive public input for the possible grant submission of 2023-2024 funding cycle for Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program, better known as FERDAP. So,
Here. Morning, everybody.
good morning.
Well, I don't know if it's a good morning, but good morning anyway.
It is good morning.
As you know, yes, as you know, the funding cycle is open for FERDAP. It will be open August 1 through August 30. These public hearings are a requirement of the grant to obtain points. It has been indicated that we wanted to apply for a Phase 7 sports complex grant. We discussed last board meeting. The project has an estimated cost of $492,000. But my recommendation is, since there was not a real comfort level of that cost last board meeting, that we submit our application, if you want to move forward with submitting an application, in the amount of $400,000 with a $200,000 match from the board. That's a reasonable amount to submit. I feel like that will give you a better comfort level. However, keep in mind the maximum amount of the grant we can be awarded is $200,000, and anything over $200,000, the board will be responsible for. In addition to the softball field, we are required to submit other elements for the coins, and as we discussed last meeting, we have picked at this time items with minimal cost, such as security lighting, parking improvements, which can be anything. It can be striping. We don't have to be real clear on that to keep the cost at a minimum until time. An additional picnic table, the planning of some landscaping, and a nature study kiosk. Those are the most cost-efficient items that we can choose to do to get the maximum number of points where the main bulk of the money is going to the construction of that property. And I'm ready for your comment, any public comment now.
So this is a public hearing. Anyone from the public would like to speak to or against? Seeing there's no one from the public, commissioners? Anyone?
There's no other discussion. Do we need to make a motion to approve? No discussion. I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. Motion seconded, we approve of the public hearing, right?
Approve the submission of the grant application.
Okay, submission of the grant application. Okay, all in favor, saying aye? Aye, okay. Yeah.
Okay, I have a couple questions. Do you want to submit do you want to do it at the 400,000 even? Does that sound fine to you?
Yes,
Yes.
okay. Got
Okay.
that?
And I do want to let you know that we have submitted the closeout package on the open sports complex grant to the FERDAP people. We did get that in before the deadline, and all documents have been submitted to us. So we're good to go as far as the county is.
Regardless of us doing,
Yes.
whether it's, I mean, the grant is only for $200,000 regardless. So, I mean, we're only gonna get 200,000. We know that anything above that we've got to pay, so.
If I can ask, are we tied to the project cost by what we submit to FERDAP? Because we know we're going to need over $200,000 to complete this project, correct?
Right, we will be tied to submit to expending at least $200,000. Whatever we spend over that, they don't care. We will only be tied to that $200,000, which I think gives us more flexibility. Then if by chance, like we're estimating 492, but if we put in our application that $200,000 match, and then by some wild chance, it goes down at $440,000, we're only committed to that $200,000. I felt like that would give the board a better comfort level, only committing to that amount. And we know we have to expend what's over, but you don't have that written commitment for more than $200,000.
Any other question? All right. Do we go to number 10? The vote to hold a public hearing set for this date at 9:05 a.m. or soon after if possible on the passage of proposed ordinance relating to election of solid waste in Taylor County, Florida.
Conrad, I'm gonna need your help on this as well, as far as, working through the different explanations. I just want to.
Well, shouldn't we read it by,
How long?
First.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to read this?
Motion.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay.
an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Taylor County, Florida relating to the collection of solid waste in Taylor County, Florida, authorizing imposition and collection of annual solid waste service assessments against residential property in Taylor County, Florida, providing the definitions, establishing the procedure for imposing solid waste service assessments, providing that solid waste service assessments constitute a lien on residential property upon adoption of assessment roll, providing that the lien for the solid waste service assessment collected pursuant to section 197, 3634 and 197, 3635 Florida statutes upon perfection shall attach to the property on the prior January 1st, the lien date for ad valorem taxes, providing that a perfected lien shall be equal in rank and dignity with the liens of all state, county, district, or municipal taxes and assessments, and superior in dignity to all other prior liens, mortgages, titles, and claims, authorizing the imposition of interim assessments, providing procedures for collection of solid waste service assessment, providing for codification, repealing Chapter 66, Article 3 of the Taylor County Code of Ordinance concerning the Taylor County Solid Waste Services, MSBU, its entirety, and providing an effective date. I'm glad I didn't have to read the whole thing, that was small.
Okay.
Will you lay this out in
Yes.
simple terms?
Yes.
Exactly what this means.
Yes, ma'am. So this, and I'll need Conrad to make sure I've got this straight, but this ordinance effectively repeals our current ordinances as it relates to solid waste. Now, what that translates into is that the partial assessment for RVs and hunt camps, that would be repealed. Payment for C&D and limbs, that would be repealed. However, if the board wishes to adopt ordinances allowing for that, so if you wish to allow for partial assessments, once we determine the best way to address C&D and limbs, that would require separate ordinances. Do I have it right, Conrad? So this is basically starting from scratch with our solid waste ordinances. And this is necessary to move forward with adopting the initial assessment resolution to effectively raise the assessment to run our solid waste program.
So right now, it repeals the partial payment made by hunting camps and others.
Correct. Now, I'm assuming that portion of it would go into effect October 1st, since we have an adopted budget and we have adopted resolutions to set those rates. So I don't believe that goes away today. Then, this is just the first step of the process. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that that's what this ordinance does. And if you wish to consider other options, that's up to you. It just will take a separate process, a separate ordinance. And I believe that's the way it was addressed with the original ordinance.
Any discussion?
So it's kind of like, I'm just digesting, but it's kind of like we've got this blanket ordinance today. And then later on, there could be like sort of a subset of that ordinance with another ordinance or two
That's exactly right.
to change what may be changed today.
Correct. And that's the purpose of codifying our ordinances. So, once we codify our ordinances, then we have a clear picture of what the end result is.
Well, one of the big questions I had the people that prepared this ordinance was, and I wrote a letter and they wrote me back by email, is what do you set and how do you set what the assessment would be? And they said, and I asked, can you do it by resolution? They said, yes, it's in the ordinance. I'm banking on that.
Correct.
So you don't pass a new ordinance on that, you can pass a resolution. For instance, if you were raising the 140 to something else, which, that's the bottom line, of course, as far as these assessments are, is, what it's gonna cost citizens of our county.
Correct. So like I said, this removes the partial assessments, and then on August 1st, we will bring to you the draft resolution that will set the assessments. And as we discussed yesterday in budget workshops, we really have two choices, well, at least two choices, and that's whether to consider utilizing listed sales tax to pay for capital, or if you want this assessment to generate revenue needed not only for operations, but for capital purchases as well. And those, of course, are the two big questions, because it does have an effect on what that assessment is set at. But it's also important to note that every year during budget workshops, we can reassess what would be needed to run our solid waste department. So the advice from the folks that are helping us with this is to adopt the highest amount, because we can always go down, but you cannot go up once that initial assessment is set. So we have to keep in mind, and I think it's important to educate the public, that if we publish a number that seems quite high, that isn't necessarily the number that is going to be adopted by resolution when the final budget is prepared.
Okay, and that's when?
September.
Okay.
Is when we'll have our budget hearing. So we have, I know time seems to be going very quickly at this point, but y'all have time to consider what that amount needs to be, and we'll discuss it on Thursday.
Well, if this is approved today, this will just mean we would stop accepting C and D.
That would not be my recommendation as of today. We will have to address that, but I think that what we can go ahead and put in place now, because the way construction materials is defined in this new ordinance is very specific, and it basically relates to debris that's generated upon construction or reconstruction of a structure. So in my mind, that means if someone's remodeling a home or building a new home, tearing down a barn, structures, then those folks really need to get a container. And that's something we can address through the permitting process. I think that's the natural place to inform folks. You need to get a container. Here's a list of people you can call. He will pick up C and D. Now, what's causing the big question is there's a gray area of what our residents possibly generate. So, we've got to get to a landing point between this end of the spectrum, which is demolishing a home or a mobile home. I personally don't think that should be taken to the roll-off site. If it is, we probably should consider charging folks for that type of debris and that amount of it. But then if you've got a homeowner who's doing a small renovation project and they have a little bit of material that's generated if they remodel their kitchen or something like that, The big question is, are we going to require those folks to get a container? Or are we going to allow them to, you know, is there a de minimis amount? And that's what we have to work through. I believe that we've addressed securing our sites. That was the purpose of changing the stickers and going through that whole exercise, was securing our sites. I think the bottom line is we don't want to use a residential assessment for commercial activities. And, you know, we've got to come to a landing point on that. But that's not something we need to do today, correct, Conrad? We've got some time to address that.
A couple of things, when you were talking and you gave the example of someone that would renovate, say, for instance, their kitchen, and they may have a little bit versus, and that's a real gray area.
It is.
What's a little bit?
I know.
I mean, you know, that could be, that's wide open.
It is, and it's all relative. To me, that may be a little bit. I mean, if it's something I can throw in the back of a pickup truck, you know, do I need to pay additionally for that? And that's what we're trying to define is, we are going to reach out to other counties. We may need to do some additional monitoring at our sites since we've changed the colors of the sticker to get a better idea of what we're talking about. I don't know that construction debris may be as much of an issue as trees. You know, if someone is clearing land to build a home, that's pretty clear in our ordinance. We should not accept that, but we can accept yard waste. But that's two different ends of the spectrum. So I think we just have to define maybe what our tolerance level is, as far as how much we can accept.
And I think too, that we really need to define exactly what is happening at each roll-off. I'm not sure that we know precisely how much C and D, how many big logs. I don't know if it's a study or surveillance. I don't know what you need to do, but, you know, we need to know what is that? What is that costing us? You know, is C and D really costing us that much? Are the, you know, the big trees, are they really costing us that much? We need to know.
Right, we do. I don't disagree. And unfortunately, when we look at our numbers, when we look at our tipping fees, we have two different types of fees to look at. That's from our compacted waste and our uncompacted waste. And Gary, if I'm not mistaken, that uncompacted waste could be so many different things. It can be furniture, it can be the contents of the shed when you clean it out, it can be the shed itself.
It's mixed loads.
It's mixed loads, so it's difficult to define exactly what's in those loads. And that's, I think at this point, now that we've secured the sites, because that was the first step that we needed to do, was to secure the sites. Now that we feel like we have gone through the exercise of securing the sites, we need to take a second look and really try to determine, you know, what we're taking, because just the size of our containers makes our sites very attractive to folks, because you can put a lot of very large items in those containers. And, you know, I believe that other counties have a totally different way of managing solid waste.
They're much smaller
Much
containers.
smaller containers, they have transfer stations. So we have, I'm going to call it a big moving machine, that we're trying to manage. And we may get to the point where we just want to completely reevaluate how we run our solid waste operations. And, but that, you know, obviously it's going to take a little bit of time. We've been trying to address it as we go along, but I think this is the first step. We can't operate in the negative while we're trying to determine what we need to do overall. But when you have sites that have these huge containers, and, you know, I think people feel like that those containers are there for large items, of course. and they're, going to fill them up, and I'll say also, looking out for our residents, where else are they going to take it? Osceola is quite a ways away. I don't know that we can expect citizens, we don't want to go so far as to expect citizens to rent containers, just to do a remodeling project. I mean, we may need to get to that point, but that's really what we need to define.
See what other counties surrounding us are doing. I know in Madison County, their containers are smaller, but yes, they are closer to the
They are.
landfill.
Exactly.
But somewhere like Lafayette County or Dixie County, for instance, what do they do, with?
They have a transfer station, so they have smaller containers. Gary, do you remember what size
I
containers?
don't,
I think they have maybe 30-yard containers at Dixie.
I think so, and they, like I say, have a transfer station, they go through and put it in a larger truck to haul it also.
Right. So it's not comparing apples to apples. So, I do think that we need to take a closer look, but I don't think we can wait another year to continue to try to move through this exercise and not have the revenue needed to run that department, especially now.
Yeah.
We need to address it if we can.
Let me say something. I've watched other places, since we've been talking about transfer stations and house C&Ds, all that. I do know one place you can go. Taylor County got the Cadillac. When you drive up on a mound, you can roll a log 10 foot by 24. You can roll a whole load of them in there. But at other places, you're gonna have to get out of your truck, pick it up and throw it in there. If you can't throw it in there, you need a box at the house. Even to, is C&D. Now, I noticed one place, they got some furniture. They have a little place sit over on the side, you can carry your household furniture, bed and,
And it normally disappears pretty quickly.
yeah.
Because they don't have a container large enough to take those items. So they just this county just sets them to the side and somebody wants them, somebody comes and gets them.
And if they don't want them, they take the end load over there, load it up and carry it every now and then.
Right.
So, but this thing of, when I hear they was taking chicken houses and all this kind of stuff over there, just rolling in the dumpster, I said, you can't really afford it. It is something we need to look at. It is the Cadillac, but for a Cadillac, you've got to pay the Cadillac cost.
And I think our biggest challenge right now, so our previous ordinance had, the ability for people to pay for C&D and limbs, because it was recognized that there was a need for that. And we can do that again. Just keep in mind that y'all will set the price for that if that's what you want. And we have to determine the best way to accept payment. And we've talked about every way that I know how. We've talked about tickets. We've talked about lock boxes. We've talked about credit cards. I think we maybe can get to the point where if we can have machines at every roll-off site, we just need a landline, and people can bring their cards and use their debit card to pay for C&D, if that's what y'all wish to do. So we still have to solve this problem, but we need to resolve the funding issue first.
Yeah. Do we need to open this up to a public hearing?
Yes.
Okay. Do I hear a motion that we open it up to a public hearing? A second? Motion second, all in favor saying aye? Aye. It's now open for public hearing. Seeing no one from the public, any more discussion from the board?
Well, I say I'm not in support of a transfer station. I'm looking at fuel costs and where prices are for our residents. I do not support burdening our residents to have to transfer that further. And I mean, I'm open to looking into these issues. I understand what the budget's saying about the costs. And I think I've understood that for some time, so I'm not opposed to the issue of moving forward to address this fund so that it sustains itself. I think that's proper business. I think that's fiscal responsibility, and I'm in support of that. But I think it's got to be done in a fashion that doesn't make it an impossibility to use the service. So it's my understanding, and I'll ask Mr. Wumbo, but aren't there dimension requirements currently on this type of material? Isn't it a 3 or 4 foot restriction? So it's already set in place that it's not supposed to be 10, 12 foot because of the issues it caused with dumping those out. So that we're not hauling a load to the landfill and then it jams up and the driver or operator can't empty that container because of it being jammed up. So I believe we have some mechanisms in place to deal with this issue of excessiveness, if that makes sense.
Yes.
But I thought that was already in place, and I believe that's why, there was a number of reasons, but given the sense of how those ramps are constructed today, you don't just back up to that ramp and unload a monstrous amount of dump into there. You do have to have some physical exertions to offload that and really place that into those containers. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
And that's by design, as I understood it.
The reason we ramped them up or cut them down originally, because people were backing up and it was ground level, people were falling in, driving vehicles in them and everything. So when we put the guardrail in the middle, that kept them from having to turn around the back end to unload, where they would physically have to pull out the back or trailer.
Actually, fall out the back of the truck, pull the limbs out of the back of the truck, fall over into the dumpster. In Cleveland County. Yeah. And that's just, that's what we had several times, but about 3 different times, wasn't it?
I'm aware of 2 incidents.
We had 3 in 6-month period fall in the container.
That was before the renovation.
And the 2 witnesses fell in the month before. That's how bad it was.
That's the reason we stopped the people backing up. And they got signs there that says, don't get in the back of your truck, but if you spend any time at the dumpster stall, you'll see people get in the back of the truck and throwing stuff over into the dumpster. But it's hard for the gentleman handling the dump site to run up there and say, get out of your back of your truck, when he's trying to do the compactor down here on the bottom of the hill, and he's got a crowd, I would recommend for each commissioner to spend a little time at the dump sites and see on a Saturday morning what takes place there, because it's my side. I spent some time there watching and I've got out there and helped people unload their trailers and seen what they had, and they bring so many limbs there that don't weigh nothing, but they fill the dumpster up with them limbs. It don't weigh hardly much. It's just little slim limbs with a bunch of leaves on them, and when it gets filled, it don't hardly weigh nothing, but it takes all that fuel to haul it to the landfill and back and bring the truck back. And they're really not hauling a load. Is that right, Gary?
Tonnage-wise or not.
I mean, it's wasting a lot of fuel and tires and labor hauling loads that they shouldn't even. The rule is it's supposed to be no bigger than 4 inches, no longer than 4 foot. That's the way it's supposed to be, as far as the paperwork goes on. But if you get 10-foot long pieces, that big around, they cut big trees, that big around down, and they cut it up short pieces, and they just stand there and throw them over in there, and it makes a mess, to haul all that stuff. We got to get a handle on it some kind of way. It's just costing us a world of money,
I wish we could burn it.
Well,
Gary, y'all still do burn.
They burning the yard debris.
They got it piled up out there, big as this building right here. Because they got so much, they can't even get it all into the incinerator. I mean, the incinerator work 24/7 and I don't look, keep up with it, would it, Gary?
It would not, we're behind so bad right now, when our tractor kind of went down for a while and all that, we got a backlog of that, but we're slowly catching up. But there's a large volume of limbs going out, you know.
Right. I just, y'all, if you might have, but if you spend, I know y'all all go to the dump sites, but if you spend a little time, for instance, in Steinhatchee, I stopped there one day to look at it, and you got a bunch of folks goes out on Steinhatchee. And some of them, and I knew some of them from Dixie County side. I knew one of them that lived in Dixie County side, he was there unloading his truck too, on Taylor County side. So, I mean, we're getting both sides of the river down there. You know?
We're not checking, stickers.
I believe they are checking those in Steinhatchee.
They're not
I've got
in other
calls.
places, I know that for sure.
But I can tell you, in Steinhatchee, the residents that have been using that for years and years have been requested, where's your sticker? Because I've gotten instructions about it. So
Right.
I can't say all sites are. I understand what you're saying, I believe, but we've got some pretty diligent attendants in Steinhatchee that like to see stickers.
Well, I mean-
People are not bashful to ask you for.
Well, I went to one in my, that's not in my district, and no request for any sticker or anything, and I was told by a lot of other people, that's why I went there, is that nobody ever gets asked. I could tell you more about that later.
We do have to remind attendants on a pretty regular basis to check stickers or cards.
We got to get a handle on it, though, on some kind of way. And I'm been looking forward to us getting a handle on it some way. It's been a long time coming.
Okay. Now, where do we go from here? Okay, the motion should be,
Yes, I'll make a motion to move forward with the.
Motion to pass the ordinance, that's what you need.
What's that?
A motion to pass the ordinance.
Make a motion to, pass the, proposed ordinance.
I'll second.
second, all in favor, say aye.
Roll call.
Okay,
All right, Commissioner English,
Yes.
Commissioner Moody,
Yes.
Commissioner Newman,
Yes.
Commissioner Fegel,
No,
Commissioner Dents.
yes,
a promise made is a promise kept.
okay. Now, what else we need to do that? Is that it for this one? All right. That's a step in one direction. Was it right or not? We'll see. I appreciate this. You know, I've been on this commission 6 years, and I've heard it every year. Somewhere down the line, we need to get the bull by the horn and start wrestling with it. And I think if we wrestle with it, we will come out bull winning and we winning too. So, you know, two winners sometimes is hard to find. But anyway, we're gonna move on. All right. We go to number 11, board to receive county closed landfill mowing and fertilizing service set for this date at 9:10 a.m. or as soon as possible.
The bid committee for this will be Kenneth Dudley, Hank Evans, and Scott, our superintendent, which is the previous committee.
Bid committee.
Bid committee.
All right, there are two bids received. The first is, A&R Lease Services, Perry, Florida.
If they're closed, why in the world do we have to do this?
I believe it is required that we maintain the site even though it's closed.
Why?
I thought that was a DEP stipulation, that we, even after the monitoring was complete, as far as our obligations, we still have to, there's still some functions that we have to keep up with.
So, I must be missing something, because this doesn't make sense to me.
the DEP requirement, I would say on any, like the active field or anything that's been active, that you have to have an ongoing program.
That's my
Mr. Dudley or
understanding,
somebody stipulate that, but that's would be my understanding, is you can't just abandon the site. You still have to provide what they deem as maintenance.
But I'm just still saying to me that to keep it up makes no sense. Is that something that we could maybe dig into and see what the rationale is that you gotta, something that's closed, that you've got to spend money to maintain it?
I'm assuming we just have to keep up with the, with the grass to keep that soil intact, right, the vegetative matter.
That's
Right, that, I believe that's the rationale for that. And that's why we have to fertilize it and keep it mowed, is to keep the vegetation up. As far as the integrity of to avoid erosion, like Commissioner Newman said, but I'll double check. I know it's expensive.
How often do they monitor that?
That's something Mr. Dudley keeps up with, so I would, but I'll check. I'll check the DEP requirements.
Got a solid waste meeting tomorrow, and if any of you know Mr. Durabi.
Yeah, we know Mr. DeRock.
I'd be glad to propose the question to Mr. Durabi on this, good question, and he pretty well, he knows all the nuts and bolts into this, what the DEP requires. We talk about it a little bit in some of these meetings, just that landfill's years and years and years, in full, but it's just talked about, but there is requirements that you do have to keep in the landfills per the DEP, once they are closed. So I'd be glad to ask them, just feedback to Luanda.
You know what? We're gonna talk about landfills. Now, we call them that. They were called dumps years ago. There's one in the East Fair. There's one in North Fair that I know of. And you go out there, and one out there is going to Foley. When I was with the city, we went out there and had to look at a well, and that was actually paint coming up to those folks' groundwater, and that's the reason we ran city water out there on the cutoff.
Because of contamination.
Yeah, but now we only monitor this one where we come with these new names, landfill. But these dumps out here, we used to call them, and we were proud of them. They were stored in these neighborhoods. And I was raised over there by one. I wonder about that. Do we go back and monitor those? Or are they even on the map? That's what I like to know. And I reckon I would need to go to the city to find out that. But Mr. Buckholder, I think you all might remember Mr. Buckholder. You remember that name being called?
Like in the sixties and seventies, they had dump sites that they dug and filled up and dug and filled up.
Yeah.
All over the county. They not monitored and kept up with.
Yeah.
They take a bulldozer, dig a hole. When it got full, they'd come push it over, and then you get right side of that hole, push another hole, and you can just pull right up side of the hole and throw your garbage in there. All over the county.
That's true. That's some place in the city in my neighborhood right now. We went and put a water line out there, and we went to put a water line out, we pulled up some overalls, dresses, stoves, bathtubs in my neighborhood now. And we can't put a road out there because of this debris less than a foot on the ground.
But it's not working.
No, it's not.
Right there where you turn into Nickel Beach on the beach road right on the right, that used to be a county dump site right there in that corner. Right there, you turn off going south, you turn right there, Nickel Beach, the whole corner right there was a dump site in the sixties and seventies. That whole place right there, the dump site.
I just public information, I don't even know what to do about that. Eventually, you get your answer, maybe we can get out. No, what nobody.
That'll lead to another investigation.
All right.
Yeah, it don't make sense, you can't just plant pine trees on it and forget about it, the dump site out there that we have to mow and fertilize.
All right, Gary, you got some answers for us
So
on
we
that?
got A&R Lee Services LLC from Perry, Florida. Their bid price is $17,193.50.
17,000 what?
$193.50.
93. How many acres is that?
So I think that's a little bit closer to what,
We can't get the city to provide that fertilizer out there? With that spreader truck?
Not free. Not price fertilizer.
The way it's written up, you have to put so many tons an acre,
Yeah.
and you have to cut the grass at a certain height.
Yeah.
The way the engineer has it designed.
I imagine that was an agreement when it was initiated, that you would, on the end of the life of that facility, continue that maintenance to that specification. That's my expectation. Otherwise, I don't think they're perfect. That's why I'm saying, it's a maintenance agreement you enter into at the initiation of the site, or the expansion or anything else, is that you will abide by their stipulation.
All right, so the second bid is T&N Lawn Masters LLC, Crawfordville, Florida. And their annual mowing cost is $18,312.
the bid committee will take a look at these and then we'll check and see what was actually budgeted and come back to the board.
Okay.
Well, this is what the last time we did, we got like a, what was it, 30,000.
It was pretty high. We rejected it.
Right, yeah,
Yeah, we rejected it, that's right.
right.
Okay. We should go to 12. Board to receive bids for the sale of county-owned property located in Keaton Beach, Florida, set for this day at 9:15 a.m. or soon thereafter as possible.
Okay, on this one, there were no bids received on this one.
No bid.
No bid.
I'd like to say something, I think we need to rebid it one more time and take that figure that we got on it, that appraised figure off of it, and see what, I had a couple of people contact me and said they'd love to bid on it, but that was just a little too high. You know, I'd love to bid it one more time, it's not that expensive to put it out again.
I'm not in favor of that.
Why would we agree to take less than the appraised amount?
No.
Why should the people take less than the appraised amount for the property?
Well, if you wanna get it on tax roll, somebody build a house there, you might have to take less amount on it, but it's not that big a lot.
I don't think you have to.
It's not uncommon for people to take less than their appraised value.
But if you wanna do that personally with your property, that's your personal decision. This is the public's property. So I don't think that they should have to take less than the appraised value. So we bid this thing and it's exhausting. And nobody's bid at the appraised value, and we paid for the appraisal so that we could understand what the values were. So if we were just gonna accept any bid, why did we go through that method to try to understand what it really was, what it was valued at?
I'd rather have $100,000 in the bank than nothing.
But you still got the resource, you've got the asset that may be worth more than that at some point in time. So I don't think that's a fair comparison, just to say, hey, right now today, we're gonna take value. Because at some point in time, it may be excessively more valuable to the people. And then we will have taken a discounted rate and not had the resource.
You sit right here and heard them neighbors say they didn't want nobody there.
But this is about what the best thing is for the people.
I understand, but that's people that they don't want there. They sit right here, both groups said they didn't want
But
there.
everybody in the open public's had the opportunity to bid on it more than one time.
I know, but they,
So if somebody wanted to be there, they've had an adequate chance to be there. But at a discounted rate,
Well, that property has sat there through some of the highest market value times, and nobody's done nothing with it until now. we can't help what the market values are today, but I can assure you that the citizens that, nobody's getting no use out of it, would rather see it on the tax roll than gaining money year over year.
I'm not sure about that.
No.
Because I think there may be a greater value for the property other than what the tax generation is. I just feel like there is. And to accept less than the appraised value, I don't think it's the best decision going forward, understanding that you still have the resource and the potential that comes with it. You still own it. So you haven't lost a thing.
I'll make a motion to put it up to bid again and cut that, see what we can get out of it.
I'll second.
I'm not in favor of that.
I think that is so wrong, because we don't have a compelling reason to sell this property. We've tried to sell it, and if nobody bids on it again, what are we gonna do? Keep reducing it till we give it away?
We have to bid on it
This
last
is
time.
this is publicly owned property. It doesn't belong to me and you, or it belongs to everybody in Taylor County. I think we should keep it as access to the Gulf. We don't need to give that away.
Well, if you open it up, let Taylor County people use it.
What comes in from the taxes is minute.
Not one person in Taylor County getting rid of it.
Is it all right for me to go down and put a camper on it? I'm from Taylor County, it's my property, can I put a camper on it, spend a weekend down there?
That's a stupid question.
No, that's not neither. You said you want the public to use it.
That's right, but not put a camper on it and live on it. If
I didn't
somebody
say
wants to
live on
watch
it,
it,
spend a weekend down there. If it's public property,
let's be reasonable.
there's no other place in Taylor County you can go camp on the waterfront. I mean, there's no other place you can camp on the waterfront in Taylor County right now.
You know, I know one of the lots, and I checked with the property appraiser, only brings in $800 a year. Are we willing to give up county-owned property for taxes of $800 a year? Come on. That's certainly not reasonable and worth it.
We already have published bids that have come in for this property that we decided not to accept. Did we have one bid or two bids?
One.
We had one bid before.
Okay, so that's already public information.
Yeah, that's worrisome.
Well, and then if just before you vote, the next question I would have is, are you going to take below appraisal value for the small parcel? Because we've already told the adjacent property owner for the smaller parcel that we would not accept lower than the appraisal price, so he didn't enter a bid. And now we're getting ready to put that up for sale with the stipulation that the minimum bid would be the appraisal price. So I would just respectfully ask the board to consider all of this.
I'd be glad to make my motion to put both of them out for bids again at less than appraised value.
Okay.
I'll second.
Oh, ready to go?
So we got,
Go.
we got a motion to re-advertise, re-advertise this property, without a minimum bid.
Both pieces.
But we also had the ability to reject those bids that come, right?
Right.
You do, and maybe you should discuss, I mean, I think you need to have some idea of what I'm not saying we need to put that number out there. Conrad, I may need your help with this, but you need to have some idea of what you will consider accepting or not.
Once we get the
So I
bid.
got a question. So Commissioner Moody, do you know somebody that wants to buy?
I've had a fella call me on both pieces of property. I had two people call me on the big piece and one called me on the other piece.
Why didn't they bid on it then?
He's gonna bid on the little piece, but he didn't bid on the big piece because we wanted too much for it.
So we wanted the value of the property, and he wasn't willing to give the value of the property. He wants to steal it?
It's just based on what lots are sold at the beach down there, there's way bigger lots sold for less money in the last year or two. Way bigger lots.
Were they appraised at a lesser value?
At this day and time, he based it on prices that sold just recently on them bigger lots down there, wasn't a .21 lot neither.
But isn't the appraisal based on an average and a comp price of what that footage is worth? Isn't that what the appraisal?
Appraisal is based on comparables.
Right.
Comparable, but the size of the lots were a lot bigger that sold out there that I looked up.
Our church sold a very small lot for over $50,000.
What now?
Our church sold a lot down there, Steve Hatchett, for $50,000. It wasn't on the water.
It wasn't on the water?
So, I mean, but all those things should be considered into the value, specific value.
That's why you get an appraisal to determine what the term fair market value means, what a willing buyer and a willing seller come to an agreement as to what the price would be. And what they do, what an appraisal does, all it is looking up the records, taking pictures, going out and seeing the property, and determining what he or she determines what the fair market value is. And y'all got to be careful about being capricious on this, and changing in the middle of the stream. You need to be very careful with that.
So we voted to have this particular bid with the minimum being the appraised value, period. And that's after the fact that we've already rejected a bid that was below that. And I guess that's to your counsel or your advice too.
And that's what I was.
I mean, I'm just trying to understand.
That's what I was saying.
Yes.
If there was property sold down there in the last year that was bigger for less, then I don't quite understand that, because as we're saying, the appraiser, he looks at the comps, what's been sold in the last year, the last 2 years, and he bases his value off of what's been sold there.
And and help me understand, and I believe I do, but that appraised value is not set at a high end or a low end. Isn't it a blend in the comps? In other words, it's not one extreme or the other.
What the appraiser tries to do is to find the most comparable sales of very similar property. For instance, if it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, the appraiser would look at 3-bedroom, 2 houses with 2 acres.
I see.
When you go to borrow money from the bank, sometimes they require an appraisal of the property. So that's what they do, okay? Especially if you go to sell your own property and you don't know what, you don't know what you ought to ask for it, then you get an appraisal. And the statute provides for appraisals on a lot of certain things that you do. So that's the whole purpose of appraisal, for you to get, when you sell it as close to the fair market value as you can.
I want to make another comment too. As commissioners, we're here to represent the county. We're not here to represent our friends that's looking for a deal at the county's expense. We're here to look after us.
It all boiled back, I'd like to say something too, it all boiled back to where this started. A man wanted, a citizen paid taxes and Taylor County wanted to use that lot, and we told him he couldn't. And so you saying you want people to use that property, but you're gonna have to tell them they can't, just like you told him.
How long
You say you wanna keep it.
How long this been going on?
Do what?
How long this been going on?
2 years.
But Commissioner, just because someone wanted to use it for a purpose that neighborhood objected to me, is not what we're talking about today. We're talking about the value of citizen-owned property today. Not what somebody wanted to do 2 years ago, but what are we doing with the citizens' land today?
Well, I'd like to say, I mean, I do think the public can use it. I mean, I'll tell you, I went down there and looked at it, pulled up on the property, and I haven't had any of the neighbors or homeowners say, hey, you can't pull up here, you don't need to be down here. And I didn't announce what I was looking at the property to see about you, see about the neighbors and see about the proximity and the size of those parcels. So I do, and that's part of what drives the thought that I have is that I believe there's potential there at some point in time for public use. So that's why I'm saying, I can't say that there's no potential way that the public could benefit from this Gulfront property that the county owns. It's their property. And I pulled up there and I have benefited from it, because I wasn't in a hurry, but I didn't have any problem or anybody say, hey, you can't stop here. You got this. None of those neighbors said, this is my property, because they're pretty well aware that it's the county's property. So I wasn't rushed or didn't have a bad experience because I pulled up there and stopped and got out and walked and looked. I didn't have that experience with that. Somebody said, hey, you can't use this property. So did I go there for a great benefit? No, that really wasn't my object, but I mean, I didn't have a bad time or somebody rushed me away from there when I was there. I think if the public did use that in a respectful way, the neighbors, according to what they said, they haven't had any problem with people pulling up there and seeing the canal or seeing the Gulf. So that's what's driving where I'm at. That, given the fact that we set the guidance as this board, that we were going to abide by the appraised value. And I think that's what we need to do. I think it's what we've done. Here we are.
Okay, let me say this. I don't have any skin in the game, no more than I'm willing to do what I think is right. Now, we have land that we don't get nothing out of. I've seen us sell land, put it on tax flow. I've seen us not having labor to go out and clean the land we call it eyesore. And, you know, sometimes get right down mad with I think with the group that don't do it. Now, we got one want to sell, or two want to sell, and two don't want to sell. Maybe I'm the tiebreaker. I want to sell it. You know, these things that keep coming up over and over again, keep kicking the can down the road. I want to sell it, and if we can't get a bid next time, then we're gonna forget it. That would be my recommendation from the commission. Put it up for bid this time. If we get a bid for it, we sell it, and if we don't get a bid, don't bring it back up.
So, Commissioner, what bid are we gonna accept? If they offer 20,000, are we gonna accept that?
We get it, and we accept a bid that we all can accept. We have a right to reject.
My question would be, what do we do about the bid we've already rejected? Because that's public knowledge.
That was my question.
I don't see how that's being fair to those previous bidders, and I just don't think that whole process is right.
It could be the same person that wants to bid again.
I don't have any knowledge of any of that.
That's gonna put the same bid in again, they do just like anyone else.
But now the public knows what that is.
Right.
You know, so you've given, there's no.
Well, he could rebid on it.
I understand that, but that knowledge is already in the public.
Yeah, the whole purpose of the bid situation is fairness. That's the whole purpose of it. That's why the bids are sealed.
Correct.
You know, that's what you're saying, the
Yes.
whole purpose of it. And then you're giving somebody an advantage, you know, knowing what the bid was before. And then you're also saying that you're not, that you very well gonna take less than what the fair market value of the property is. Like I said, that could be considered capricious.
So this is wrong. This is wrong, right?
Well, I'm trying to say it in a nice way, I guess you'd say. It's, you know, it's already been advertised, got no bids. The fair market value of the property is what it's appraised at. And it's a mistake to take less than what the fair market value is. You can certainly rebid it, but, you can still reserve that you're not gonna take something less than what the fair market value is. Think of yourself as you're selling property, your own property. Are you gonna sell your property where the fair market value is something less? Unless you just have to get rid of it, you know? If you don't have to get rid of it, then you're not gonna sell to somebody for less than fair market value unless you have to get rid of it, you know, you're facing bankruptcy or something like that. I'm not a yes person, I'm just telling it like it is.
Well, we've got you here for a reason.
Yeah.
And that's to guide us in the right direction and to do what's right and to not do what's wrong.
Well, I tell you what, we got another chance to get rid of it, sell it or not sell it. And if we put it up for bid, nobody bid on it, then we don't bring this up no more.
Then we can put a sign there, it's public property, they can use it. Let everybody use it where they want to. See how the neighbors like that.
Well, there would still be restrictions on using public property for commercial activities. You know, there's really, that's not something that we would allow. And we don't currently allow businesses to operate on public property unless there is a lease agreement in place. So,
We could lease it out to a business then, what's it say?
well, and that's what the board considered.
That was
before.
suggested at one of the hearings,
Right,
was leasing it. That was
Right.
suggested. You might be able to lease it for more than what you would receive in, ad valorem taxes. Now, you know, I suggested that, a year ago?
yes, sir.
This whole thing smells. This whole situation smells.
Okay. Well,
So I believe you have to finish taking a vote, and then I will need direction from the board if I need to send another letter to the adjacent property owner, if we need to reverse what happened at the last meeting as far as asking for a minimum bid for the smaller parcel, and if I need to notify the adjacent owner again that the board has reversed its decision and give him another 10 days to submit a
Bid,
bid.
a proposal or a bid.
Right.
Did he submit a bid, the neighbor?
He did not, only because he asked the question of if the board would require the minimum bid amount. And when I told him yes and started the clock again, then he made a decision not to submit a bid because of the minimum bid price. So that's why I'm asking for clarification. If the board wishes for me to reach back out to him and let him know the board has, you know, you reversed a previous decision and that now you will accept a lower bid than the appraisal price.
That would be only fair, you know.
That'd be the only fair thing to do, is
I just want to make sure we.
yeah,
So-
does he have to put in there whether it's a lower bid or we just rebidding it again? Does it have to say that it's lower bid? We'll take a lower bid?
I just need to clarify with, I'm talking about the smaller piece now. I just need to clarify with him that there will not be a minimum bid, and we haven't re-advertised that yet because I needed to get a legal description to Cindy. So all I would need to do is send another letter, give him another 10 days, and basically start the process over again. And make sure he understands the board can accept or reject
Okay.
any and all bids.
When will this come back?
I don't think, it wouldn't be the next meeting, it would be the second meeting in August, right, Gary? In order for us to have time to notify or it may be the first, we'll have to check the timeline. Because I have to give this property owner 10 days and then,
And then once you give him, and if that's probably owner decides to make an offer, then you have to determine whether in fact you're gonna accept that offer.
Right.
Right, and then if you say you don't accept it, and then you bid it out, and you bid it out for less than that, you are in trouble.
Oh,
You
yeah.
follow what I'm saying?
That's the concern, is the fact that, you
You
know,
gotta follow the
Right.
statute.
we don't want to, disclose that bid, and then reverse course again, would be my concern.
Yeah,
Which is basically, unfortunately, what's happening with the larger parcel at this point.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, this situation is not only embarrassing for me as a board member, but it's troubling, because we told a homeowner, he asked specifically, did he have to, he asked, could he make a bid lower than the value price? And we told him no. The other piece of property, now, we want to change it so that our friends or somebody is able to buy it at a cheap price. How does that make us look? The citizens are going to read about this in the paper. And then we've got our attorney is doing his best to advise us, but we got 3 commissioners that's not listening.
I think another point to make there with this smaller property is, those are the same folks that have been maintaining that property for years. They said all these things in these hearings and these meetings. And then we told them, if it's the appraised value or no go. And now here, this development comes along. So I'd really ask.
I think them folks that bought that house there, they just bought that house, they ain't
I'm
anything.
talking about the smaller piece.
Yeah.
This piece, they didn't just buy the house. Mr. Collins said he's been there for years maintaining that property. And I tend to believe that's true. And then when we told him that we require the appraised value, he told us that when we were having these hearings, that he couldn't afford the appraised value.
What's wrong with giving him a chance to get it? Now, we got a right to change our
I
mind.
can tell him that all from the get-go. And my thing is, if we, it gets back to the same issue about requiring this appraisal. And we paid for this appraisal with the survey, because we wanted to know what the value was. Because, as a matter of fact, we owe that to the people. And now we've got that information, and we're saying we don't need to hold to what the appraised value is. And I just don't know that we've demonstrated the best path forward. If we're gonna, in this instance, after we've exposed a sealed bid and required the appraised value, to then go back on those things?
If we had to accept a lower price, it'd be one thing, but we hadn't got to accept no kind of bids on it. That's part of it, we don't have to accept no bid.
But we've already disclosed what a sealed bid was, and then we required the appraised value. And I can only call that at best wishy-washy.
Bad business.
I mean, listen, we've had all these discussions, we've heard from the adjacent landowners, and we went this course because we were gonna get the appraised value, because we wanna get this back on the tax roll. I guess. And I'm still at the same place. I think there's a greater, higher use and benefit to the public than what your tax roll, addition is gonna be. And I think even in that, even if we said, we agreed on what the attorney says, that we could lease it. If we break a lease, we still own the property. That's the benefit to the lease. We haven't lost the asset, and we haven't foregone any potential for the future for the public who owns the property.
We need to have a sign there, this is public property, use it any way you want to then.
Well, you can by the guidance of parks or things of that nature, so I don't have a problem with that. I don't really think that the neighbors have an issue with that. They didn't say that when they were here. They didn't. None of the neighbors said, listen, we really want you to keep the ownership, but we want to use it like it's ours. Now, one of the neighbors has maintained it like it was his. So I don't have a problem if we want to post rules there and keep the property. I think that's the benefit, and I don't see any reason why we couldn't do it.
We can't even keep Hodges Park clean, we need 2 more tracks to try to keep clean.
The neighbors has been keeping this clean, we have not spent a dime keeping these properties clean. Commissioner Dents, when you talked about we don't have the money to maintain them all, we haven't maintained these.
Well, you know.
We haven't spent a dime on
Well,
them.
maybe-
Those neighbors have done a number of years of maintenance. You've seen the grass cut there. I mean, you know that that's being maintained by those folks.
Okay,
So it really hasn't come as a burden to the operational expense county.
all right, we had a motion on the floor, the motion passed.
Well, we haven't voted yet. We got a motion to advertise both Keaton Beach parcels to receive bids without a minimum bid.
And reject, with the possibility of rejecting if we don't accept it. Okay.
Well, we don't need to advertise the smaller lot. We would only be advertising the larger lot, and then I would notify the adjacent property owner regarding the smaller lot. Correct?
Right.
Okay.
So can I make another comment?
Go ahead.
Okay, so Commissioner Moody keeps referring to when this all began. And I think when it all began with the business owner that wanted to use the small lot, the small one. What we're talking about today that came up is the larger lot. So this doesn't have anything to do with what happened a year or two ago with that owner that wanted to use county-owned property for his business.
He wanted to unload the scrap traps there, and we didn't want him to do it, we won't let him do it at the boat ramp, we won't let him do it nowhere. And he's part of Taylor County too, and he pays taxes, and he should be able to pull up there and unload his scrap in his boat just like anybody else does.
But that's not the way we operate. We don't allow businesses. You just heard the administrator say we don't have businesses doing that.
But during the pandemic, we would not let nobody but commercial people use the boat ramp. And so you let them then use the boat ramp, why they can't use it now?
I don't care if they use the boat ramp.
She's saying it's not, you just said you didn't want commercial people using it.
The boat ramp.
Well, I wasn't referring to the boat ramp. I was just referring to county property. For example, if someone wanted to sell snow cones at the boat ramp, we would not allow that. We don't allow people to conduct business on our rights of ways. That's all I'm referring to, not to commercial fisher people using the boat ramps. So let me clarify that.
Anybody can launch a boat in the boat ramp. I mean,
Right.
we're not trying to say that there's a restriction to launching boats. I certainly, I'm not gonna say we're not gonna let commercial fishermen use our boat ramps. I don't think that's reasonable at all. I think they've got a boat. I think that is their business. I think they ought to be able to launch their boats.
I do too.
Right.
Why wouldn't we allow those things? I mean, but the difference here is, if this board needs to seek out a designated place that would help our commercial fishermen along the Taylor County coastline to have a resource that would help them, I'm not opposed to that. I'd like to understand the terminologies and what the requirements might be in that. But if that's what it comes down to, I'm not sure that this parcel is that best location. I'll say that off the get-go. But if it means that we need to look at a place so that we can offload, the commercial fishermen can offload their catch in Taylor County and we get credit for that, you got my support for that. Now, I don't think this parcel.
Right down the street from that parcel, you got commercial fishermen and crowds.
I understand.
I mean, what's the difference from right down the street? and
But
right
what you
there?
don't have down the street is that guardrail that has all issues with that street and the access to those particular points.
That guardrail keeps somebody from running into the canal right there.
Understood, but it's required, and I don't think there's any variance to it, so that's why I'm saying, if we wanna have a consideration for, the commercial fishermen and them having a place to offload Taylor County, you got my attention,
Well-
However, we can't do it with the access at these particular places. I just don't think that's gonna be.
You got people living right by them other commercial businesses down there.
I'm
But
not
is
so
it
much
county-owned
saying.
property though? Is it county-owned down the street that you're talking about? Is it county-owned property? There is.
And that's why we're trying to sell this, where it won't be county-owned property. We're trying to give people a place a business, the man wanted to try to unload his scrap traps there. I mean,
Well, then let's charge the, value of it, not give it away.
Yes, sir.
No, we just need to vote on the motion of the section. Right, the initial motion to re-advertise, this parcel without a minimum bid, reserving the right to reject bids.
Yes. That's the motion.
That's the motion.
We got the motion and second. Very good. All in favor? Aye.
No.
All right.
Mr. Chairperson.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, do I need a motion to notify the adjacent property owner of the board's action?
So we're following the statute.
Okay. So we're not, that wasn't on the agenda.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
This is all the same thing.
Do we need a separate motion for that?
Well, I think it would be a good idea.
The motion for her to notify the adjacent landowner.
Right.
Make a motion
Pursuant to the statute.
Notify the adjacent landowner of the.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Motion second, all in favor, saying aye? Aye.
He may get him a good deal.
Okay. We will go to number 14, I believe it is. Board to consider approval of budget transfer from the, is
13.
that it?
13.
13, okay. Ms. Lisa, help me with that name.
Brett.
Brett, okay.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, County Commissioners, for allowing me to spend some time with you this morning. My name is Lisa Brett. I'm the Executive Director of Advantage Aging Solutions. Formerly, we are incorporated as the Area Agency on Aging for North Florida. We are, the purpose of my visit with you today is just to help clarify some statements that were made by the board chair of Taylor County Senior Citizens, Ms. Diane Landry, who's here, in support of her request for county assistance. So Advantage Aging Solutions is the Florida Department of Elder Affairs certified and Federal Older Americans Act codified recipient of over $8 million annually to ensure that services to seniors are funded across 14 counties in the Big Bend and Panhandle counties.
It's 18,000, not 18 million?
8 million. I wish it was 18. 8.
8 million.
8 million. We allocate those service dollars based on a funding formula that takes into consideration the number of seniors aged 60 years of age and older in each county and some other subsets of the demographic makeup of the county. The agencies that we contract with are procured through competitive bid processes every 6 years. One of those bid processes is the Community Care for the Elderly Lead Agency designation. With that comes the responsibility of providing in-home supportive services to keep seniors in a least restrictive setting, which is often if you have the chance to decide where you want to age in place, it'll be your home, correct? And then the other one is for the Older Americans Act program. We issue a request for information, and if people are interested in bidding on that program, we then issue a request for proposal. We did this last in 2021. Our recipient, as has been for over 45 years, is Taylor County Senior Citizens Center. I did provide a chart. You'll see the funding chart that was included in the packet. And I just want to review those with you. It starts up at the top. You'll see 3B, C1, C2. Those are our programs under the Older Americans Act. This is funding that Taylor County Senior Citizens is guaranteed to receive. As long as we don't have a reduction, this is what their allocation is each year. So 3B is your supportive services. There's transportation, there might be chore service, homemaker service, some other activities at the senior center are largely funded there. C1 is congregate meals. That is a dining site where seniors come to receive meals. And might I make sure that if you have not had the opportunity to go down to the senior center to participate in the lunch program, I would highly recommend that you do that. This organization is one of three of our organizations that actually prepare their own meals. Our other providers are receiving frozen meals that they then heat and serve. So if you want nice flavorful country kitchen cooking, they're the place to go. And then your C2 meals, those are for home delivered meal clients, individuals who maybe live too far out of the area to come to the meal site. They might receive a frozen, it's again, freshly frozen meals, or for those who they're homebound. They can't drive, they are not as ambulatory as other older adults. As I said, this organization, over 45 years, has been our only provider in the county. You'll also see in the chart that there is the federal nutrition program. That's like extra, that's bonus money for our provider. By providing the meals in a manner that adheres to the recommended dietary allowance for older adults, they receive 72 cents per meal that's served. So they have an additional $12,000 that comes in. Next, you'll see Federal American Rescue Plan dollars, the same categories as I just described above with the Older Americans Act. Those monies were just actually awarded last night. We have the contracts out, and I believe Ms. Diane's going to sign today and get that over so that we can provide an additional $88,000.
Wait a minute now. That's the Federal American Rescue?
Yes, so this is only going to be available for the next 2 years.
Okay, but it's $20,000 this year.
Per category. So, and actually that was estimated, we actually ended up awarding $88,000.
Okay.
So this is not recurring funding, that is just through the federal stimulus grants.
Which four categories, if you will?
Okay, under Federal Nutrition Services,
Yes, ma'am.
you'll see then Federal American Rescue Plan.
Mm-hmm.
There's 3 line items.
I got you. So those were listed out, I guess, as 20 each.
Yes, that was our estimate before we were able to actually run our calculations.
Okay.
And in particular, Taylor County received an additional, a larger percentage of that funding because of the home cooked meals. That is something unique and different from our other providers, and we wanted to recognize them for those efforts. Then the last 3 items you'll see are related to general revenue funding that's awarded by the Florida legislature to help keep individuals in home with supportive services. And we provided you with an example of some of those types of supportive services. So you'll see that the total awarded funding, and it should say 22 for Taylor County, is about $369,000. What happened during COVID was a little bit different than, I mean, we can all say we survived COVID, right? But during COVID, because individuals were not able, we really encouraged, the state was encouraging seniors to stay home, right? Stay safe in your home. That shifted the whole need that we had for our nutrition programs of our older adults, as well as those supportive services. Many supportive services were not able to be provided because seniors wanted to be safe. They didn't want anybody coming into their home from the outside. Meals nationwide was the #1 service that the Older Americans Act stood behind and said, we are going to make sure that no senior goes hungry. You currently have about 6,600 older individuals in your community, which is age 60 years of age and older. Every one of those individuals is eligible to be served out of the Older Americans Act. I can't tell you right now the proportion that would be eligible to come to the dining site versus those that would be eligible to receive in-home services. But when you consider that the Taylor County Senior Citizens Council is only able to serve 50 meal clients a day right now, and they will not be able to sustain that without increased funding, you see how small of a population we're talking about that we're able to serve in the county based on the funding that's provided through my organization. During COVID, Ms. Landry is correct. She presented to you on the 21st. She's correct. We didn't want any senior being turned away for meals. That was a directive from the federal government down to our state, down to us. And that we got to be the messenger. So when she referenced the state and feds, that's funding through my organization. So we know that with funding is running out. At the end of the year, without additional funding, Taylor will be required to start turning clients away, and they will either end up having those individuals go on a wait list for meals or a reservation system. I can tell you years ago, they operated on a reservation system. They had many more than 50 individuals coming to their meal site each day. The change in demographics, you have a re-age of older, well, new population of older adults aging in to the program eligibility stage. Ms. Landry was very clear in stating to you that the cost of food and staff and wages are skyrocketing. We all know that. You can turn on any news channel and hear that we're in significant financial crisis across the nation. I did want to make sure that I have the opportunity to clarify. There were really two issues that Ms. Landry was presenting to you on the 21st. And it's very important that you understand when her request for the additional, say, $15,000 a month would be needed to sustain their programming. That really is infrastructure and meals. I don't know if you're aware, it was an old elementary school that was donated to the senior center to provide the services. Some renovations were made, so they have an excellent dining site. It is very welcoming. The rest of the building has to be maintained by them. Their donation of the building did not come with maintenance. It did not come with construction. It did not come with making sure that the retrofitting of the center was going to be ongoing to increase the available space for use. But I just want to take the last few minutes here just to clarify some of the points and really in summary let you know what we feel are the issues at hand that Taylor County senior citizens can use from the county. And I'm not just saying the county commission. I understand that you provide funding to the United Way. They then allocate the money as they see fit. And I can tell you, I'm passionate about children. I have two myself. And it's great that we're looking at supporting services for children. But if you look at the demographic trends across the nation, the fastest growing population is individuals aged 60 years of age and older. We're going to need these younger set individuals to be trained into helping to care for these individuals. By keeping an individual in a home to receive services, you're saving the state significant dollars. It costs an individual about $60,000, or it costs nursing home industry about $60,000 to maintain an older, frail resident, as compared to the programs and services that Taylor County provides, can be an average of $8,000 a year per care plan. So we are able to serve more people with services they want in the place they want to receive those services. For every $2,500 a year that Taylor County senior citizens receives, they can serve one senior for the year in their meal program. And again, many people want to come there for their meals because they provide them fresh home cooked meals by a caring professional staff. They are doing the best they can with the resources they have to serve seniors across this entire county. That includes the areas of Steinhatchee and High Grove, or
Shady Grove.
Yeah, Shady Grove, and Perry Proper. They need approximately $7,500 additional meal funding to serve the 14 clients who are at risk of being cut from that program right now. And lastly, and most significantly, is for you to be aware that these federal and state grants have 10% match requirements. So in order for the agency to be able to continue to prosper further, they really need an additional $33,000 a year in match funding for these grants. So yes, the $15,000, I don't negate that. That's infrastructure. And it's really, I don't necessarily know that it's a monthly fee. I do know that they are working with the legislature to try to get a sponsor for a legislative appropriation for the infrastructure. But my main concern, I want a safe place for seniors to be served. Don't get me wrong. I highly support that request and need. But additionally, we support the need to help feed your county's clients, your county's older Americans. So I thank you for your time. I just wanted the opportunity to clarify and support what Ms. Landry has presented to you before, but clarify there really are two issues at hand. My agency wants to make sure that seniors are fed. Her agency has a responsibility for infrastructure and services. I don't know if y'all have any questions.
Mr. Chairperson.
Go ahead.
Ms. Fritz, can you clarify, prior to the additional funding for COVID, how many senior citizens were fed? Did it increase from 36 to 50 during that time?
I believe it's actually surpassed 50.
Okay.
But you have to remember, we were doing, we weren't allowed to use the senior center. I guess that's another significant point. Seniors weren't able to come into the site during COVID. They had a drive-through set up.
Right.
So they increased their meal preparation and served additional meals. So I'm not sure what their highest number was, but it was well over 50.
Well, prior to that time period, do you have a number of the number of congregate meal clients?
They've always had an average of 40 to 50. Okay. But we had donations that were coming in. Funding across the United Way has changed over the course of the past years. We have not seen increases in the federal funding for meals, and until we received the stimulus grants and the American Rescue Plan. They're still kind of debating that up in Washington. But in your home-based programs, there is also some monies that are set aside for home-delivered meals.
And is there any type of sliding scale as far as payments for these meals?
So that's where the interesting part comes in. There are no fees that can be required of individuals participating in the Older Americans Act.
Okay.
Any donations that are given freely, and other ways to really earn their match is through volunteer sources. And I don't think you have a very high volunteer base for the meals in particular. Yeah.
So there's really no way to require a contribution from the recipients of these meals?
You cannot require, you can advertise that you accept donations, and this is, your average meal cost is that, they can post the meal cost, and donations are greatly appreciated.
So really the only requirement is your age.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone 60 or older can request these services.
Correct.
And they must be served?
No, the center does have a prioritization policy, and that's where that reservation, so right now, I think it's reservations is really their prioritization. They don't want to turn anybody away, but if they're at the point where they reach capacity, that is their first alternative. We also look at nutrition risk. Individuals that are coming that have the highest nutrition risk can be considered.
Okay, so there is a way for you to rank?
Yes.
Who should receive meals? Is any of that indigent based, or is it strictly?
It's not income based. We can ask an individual what their income is, but they don't have to tell us.
Okay, so it's basically nutrition risk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And, the center does try to provide alternatives. I'm sorry, we can't serve you for this program if you're not eligible for whatever reason. Then, we let them know where they might be able to find other food sources. But, the meal program provides a great challenge in the fact that we want to make sure no senior goes hungry.
Yes.
You're in a food desert, so there aren't many choices, right? And that's pretty much the basis of our support.
Question. You mentioned in the beginning that this facility here is one of just a very few that provide a home-cooked meal every day. So what is the cost of a frozen meal and what is the cost of the home-cooked meal here?
You know what your average cost of the meal? I'd say at least $6.
$13.
$14 for the ingredients. And the other providers are probably paying about $12.
So it actually costs the senior citizen how much for a frozen each meal?
For fresh meals, she's saying her meal cost is about $14. That
And
includes
for a frozen meal, how much does it cost? 12. So there's a $2 differential.
and that was during COVID. Now, I don't know, we also have had our providers go through a bid process recently. And I say for the cost of that meal, the meal itself is $6 and something. That doesn't include the milk, the bread, the service, the packaging, all of that they have to, preparation.
I would think it would cost a lot more to make homemade meals because of, the staff that you have to have.
They're doing, for cost containment, they have done a fabulous job being able to keep their prices low as they can with the fresh ingredients. But, don't know, with farmers going through challenges with farming subsidies, the cost of food to reap it and get it out to the stores, all of these costs are increasing, so I don't know how long we'll be able to sustain that price.
I know where you're coming from. I'm on the board of the Hill County Senior Center. I try not to get too involved because when we get ready to make a decision, I probably have to abstain from the voting. But I do know that food costs is one of the things that probably eating our books, eating us alive. The other thing I was gonna ask, do we get anything from Second Big Bend or Harvest or Second Harvest? We don't get no food from them, do we, Diane?
I'm not sure. There was a proposal at one time. I don't know if it's come through yet or not.
They are a partner with Second Harvest, but not all of the ingredients that they need are provided through Second Harvest. So it does help the center to be able to be a distribution site for meal packages, but the foods that come from them would not be enough to help with your program because you can't guarantee what you're going to get.
But now, we talking about $15,000 a month. We talking about $180,000.
My ask is if you want to help sustain the 50 clients that we continue to serve, an additional $33,000 this year is needed. That's food. The $15,000, the additional funding that Ms. Landry spoke about at the June 21st meeting, like I said, there's two issues, and I'm not sure that you understood. One was strictly infrastructure. They need a lot of repairs. It is not as safe. It's not as safe throughout the rest of that complex as it is in their meal site. They've also had to increase some security measures because they had been broken into a couple of times. But all of that's come at the expense of that board.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make sure we had the opportunity to clarify where we feel the county could be of support, and I thank you for your time. My contact information is available should any of you wish to reach out to me.
Okay. Thank you. Any more questions for her? All right. Moving right along. Item 14,
I believe you,
board to consider approval of budget transfers from the solid waste reserve as agenda by the county administrator.
we've discussed this several times. This is the reserves available to, continue to fund the solid waste department, and I'm asking to transfer those, mainly for tipping fees.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion second, all in favor saying aye? Aye. Okay. Got another 15.
Yes, I'm asking the board to consider approval of an agreement with, District 2 Medical Examiner. As you may recall, back in January, I came to the board, and brought a request from, Jack Campbell, State Attorney, regarding the upcoming retirement of Dr. David Stewart, and requested the board to appoint a commissioner, who was Commissioner Fiegel, to be a member of the search committee for his replacement. Since then, I have received correspondence from Mr. Campbell that provided the update to the effort that the committee had voted temporarily to retain the services of Jonathan Thogmartin, MD, to assume the responsibilities of Dr. Stewart in the role of Chief Medical Examiner upon his retirement. That in order to move forward with this, each county must enter into a contract with Dr. Thogmartin. I have spoken to him. He is very knowledgeable. He is very, very easy to talk to, very communicative, and really this should be a trend, something that doesn't really bear any operational consequence to the board. And I know Commissioner Fiegel, you've been a part of that search committee.
This is cut and dry. This is, the whole committee has unanimously, selected and voted on this medical examiner. He's credentialed, and, we don't have a choice. We have to have a medical examiner.
Right.
So, it's pretty cut and dry to approve it.
And the fee schedule is comparable to the previous, medical examiner. Now, that being said, I do unfortunately anticipate that there may be an increase in fees, but it would not be because of the new medical examiner. It would just be because of, increased deaths, which we saw this year. We've already had to transfer some funds from contingency to allow for that.
Historically, we've had increases, from them, I think every year, pretty much every year.
Yeah, there was a little bit more of an increase. There's been a little bit more of an increase when they built a new facility, right. But as far as the fees, the medical examiner fees, they were comparable.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor saying aye? Aye. Looked like I saw somewhere in there, it cost about $1,200 to do an autopsy.
It depends on the services that have to be rendered.
And the county must have one in order for mysterious death and stuff like that nature, right?
Yes, so the total cost for an autopsy, is $23.16. Or no, excuse me, that's a whole special. It's somewhere around.
Yeah. I saw
Sometimes they
it.
do a partial.
Right, it just depends on the circumstances.
You got another 60?
Yes, as you recall, back in May, the county engineer came to the board and asked for discussion regarding allowing golf carts on First Avenue in Steenhatchee, and that is because of the upcoming construction project and the need to buy signage. However, upon further review of that codified ordinance, it was discovered that First Avenue was already on the list. However, there were additional roads that really need to be removed from the list because maybe they were under private ownership. So in order to simplify the process for Steenhatchee roads, what we're recommending is that you consider amending the ordinance to allow golf carts on all county maintained roads with a posted speed limit of 25 miles per hour or less in Steenhatchee. that would greatly simplify the process. That's currently the practice, from what I understand, because there's so many roads in Steenhatchee where we allow golf carts. And then 25 miles per hour, we felt like was, we're not sure exactly when that number was mentioned. I believe originally, many, many years ago, we were comparing what the speed limits were with other counties, but we know that it's typically a golf cart cannot travel over 25 miles per hour. So that would keep the speed consistent on those roads.
Motion approved.
Second.
Discussion. This is
Go ahead.
exclusively for Steenhatchee and not the rest of the county?
Correct. I'm not saying we can't address the other areas,
But this one is
but
just.
this one is just for Steenhatchee, so we can basically clean that ordinance up and.
I beg your pardon.
No, I didn't mean to. There's a long list.
They gotta clean it up.
I feel like I'm the golf cart
Like the
guru
king
of golf
golf cart
carts.
ordinance.
One right after another. So essentially what you're asking for is, for the board to approve for me to draw a very simple ordinance that would say that, golf carts are allowed on all roads in Steenhatchee, Florida, which has a speed limit maximum of 25 miles per hour.
County maintained roads.
Counting.
Yes, sir. And that list is quite long, that's what I was referring to.
I'd like to see that include everywhere.
That's been the thing.
Now, we haven't looked at the other areas, but we can bring that back. to the
County
board.
maintained. Now, I don't need to list all the county maintained, I just need to just
Correct,
put it on there. Okay,
Yes.
so it'll be a one, very,
yes.
very short ordinance with a
We
notice.
can't do that, Dave, today.
Okay,
Why don't we just, let me just double check that.
But I think you want to check and make sure it doesn't cause any conflicts.
Yeah, but that shouldn't be an exhaustive process. We can bring that back to the board.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Do you need a motion? Did we get a
We got a
motion?
motion.
We got a motion and a
Did we
second.
vote on it?
We got a motion and a second.
Okay. All in favor? Go ahead. Yeah.
That's all, thank you. That's all I have for today.
All right, this next item.
Well, so we will see you Thursday morning at 9:00, and we also, just a reminder, we have a tentative budget workshop scheduled for the 25th. The 26th is our regular July workshop, and then the special meeting on the 28th at 9:00 a.m. Thank you.
Commissioner Siegel.
Yes. I would like for this board to, have a proclamation or whatever you would call it. I want to say a hero proclamation for our county firefighter that, saved his sister's life in the shark attack. I think we should honor him, because certainly he's seen as a hero. So I'd like us to consider that for as soon as possible. You know, I know that we have a lot of people coming to ask us for requests, you know, and talk about their financial crisis. But yet, you know, we're in a financial crisis also. But the feeling is that if you want something, go to the county. We have plenty of money to help them with their financial crisis, but we're living that ourselves. So what are we gonna do? Are we gonna eventually be forced to have to raise our millage in order to make up for all the things that we do? Are we gonna have to cut back on some of our services to support other entities? And believe me, I want to support as many as we can, but at the end of the day, that's gonna fall back on us to make hard decisions one day. then the public's gonna be looking at us. They're not gonna look at XYZ organization and ABC organizations that came and wanted money and we gave it to them. They're gonna look at us of why we raised the millage. So I just want us to be careful and think about that. I want to support all the people that we can, but we need to be very, in tune to our own financial crisis. That's all I got. Thank you.
You welcome to the public? If not, what do I hear?
Appreciate you back there.
You got a couple of minutes after.
Where you got that? All right.
Thanks, sir.
I've looked at everything on there, good way.
You got something too?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Conrad.
The car property contract, permit number initially wrong place,
I don't have to.
but it's the best.
horrible.
Go home, go to bed.
Copies and highlighted, right where the destination.
Okay. Let me see what I got there, Gary, we get it.
Just want to make sure you don't.